what I want to do in this series, we're going to have somebody interview somebody from our congregation, from our community here, who had a personal encounter with Jesus, and we're just going to hear their story. Are you ready for Paul Howell's close encounter story today? All right, Paul. Paul, welcome. Hello. Hey. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Just shout like Bartimaeus. Is that okay? Just test that. Sorry about that.
Hello.
Paul Howell. Paul, good to have you here. You are a work in investment banking. We won't hold that against you.
Thank you.
Right? We love investment bankers and tax collectors in the house. Jesus loved the tax collectors. We love bankers. You're married, one child. In fact, your little one had his first birthday yesterday. Yeah. Come on, that's
and he's
awesome.
Very cute as well.
There we go. Very cute. Paul, I met you first as a student.
That's right.
Imperial College student. You studied, what did you study?
I studied maths.
Maths.
Yeah.
Okay, now here we go. Describe your spiritual life when you got to university.
Oh, wow. So I got to university, I was 19. I started my maths degree. I don't think I'd ever really been to church before. I grew up near Cambridge. My family weren't Christians. There was no kind of religious history in there. I didn't really know anyone at my school or anyone. I'd said this to someone recently. I said, I've never really met a Christian. And they were like, oh, you must have met a Christian. Not consciously I'd ever really met someone who regularly went to church or had any faith.
Wow.
So I've been to church once for a funeral or something, but other than that, nothing.
Wow. That's in this country. Anything else about, what was your life like back then?
Like any other 19-year-old student, young guy, I guess, doing all the things that one might do.
Okay. And just to sort of spur the imagination, you were in the rugby team at Imperial.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So just take that wherever you need to take it, and that's where Paul was. Wow. Now describe. Obviously, you are a follower of Jesus now. It's just fantastic to have had you in this church for so many years, and you lead a connect group. You're on our finance board. You're following Christ. You love Jesus. But tell us what happened. You got to university like that. What happened? What was your encounter? How did you meet Jesus?
Yeah, it was just incredible. God just put so many Christians in my life. So going from never really having met or known a Christian ever before, I got to university, and the first person I met was a young girl who I later married. But she was a Christian, and she would talk about God all the time. And I thought, that's a bit weird. And then I went to my maths lectures, and I sat down next to a guy who started to talk about his faith, and he goes to church. I thought, okay, that's really strange. And this is at Imperial as well, which is, as you know. So then I met someone else in my maths class, this girl who was also a Christian, and it was just within the first week I'd met maybe 4 or 5 Christians.
Wow.
And they were all talking about their faith and talking about how they went to church and how they really believed and they loved God. And it was a bit shocking. And then I played rugby. So I got on the rugby bus to the first rugby games. I thought, right, this is it. I'm definitely not going to meet any Christians here. And literally the guy I sat next to, a really good friend of mine, he also was a Christian. So within the first few weeks, everywhere I went, I kept walking into Christians. It was very strange, and it wasn't like I had anything against it. My life up to that point was I just assumed that Christianity had been disproved or something. That was my mindset. It was like I knew some people went to church, but I thought they were just old ladies and I don't know, monks and things. So that was my mindset. That's where I was. Anyway, so yeah. Wow. So I had lots of questions, obviously.
Okay, and what sparked, what helped you take a next step there?
I think, as I say, I was just inquisitive to start with. I thought, wow, okay, I don't really know anything about this. I like to know about stuff, and I thought, there's these people who are, successful and really bright and intelligent and great outgoing people that I'm meeting, and they say they love God, and they, funny phrases like, I love God more than my family, things like that they used to say. And I remember asking Anne-Marie when we were getting to know each other, I said, what's your favorite song? She's like, oh, you won't have heard of it. It's a worship song. So just weird things like that. Okay, just catch my, things I'd never heard these phrases before. Never heard people talking like that. So yeah, they
So how
invited.
did you make a
yeah.
decision to follow
Okay.
Christ? So you heard
So-
about Jesus.
Yeah, so I
and
heard.
obviously
So then,
learned.
anyway, these people started inviting me to church. They saw I was interested, and I had loads of questions, and I just, long story cut short, I found answers to every question I had, and made a decision and made a commitment.
Wow, that's fantastic. Was that in your which year? First year, second year?
First year.
First year.
Yeah,
Wow,
right before my exams.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So you made a decision to receive Christ as your Savior. You got involved here. What has changed? What do you think is most different for you
Whoa.
because you met Christ versus if you hadn't?
What has most changed?
Or one thing.
How long have you got? Yeah. Okay. I think so many things. Like peace, hope, joy, huge. I think one of the big things was like direction and purpose in my life.
Yeah.
Just having certainty about where I'm going and having clarity about the direction. I think the biggest one is probably love, and it's especially as a young 20-year-old guy, having like love and compassion for people, especially people in need. It was that was like an overnight instant change. I remember I would go out with my school friends, and we would meet up years later, and we'd go out for drinks and stuff, and I could just see myself as I was. And when you're a group of guys and you go out and you go drinking and things, and there's another group of guys, and there's always like people start wanting to have fights and getting angry, and I was I looked at that's how I was, and it was just so foreign afterwards. It was I don't know how else to explain it. I guess just compassion for people.
Yeah. Fantastic. Wow. One more question. When you read the story of blind Bartimaeus meeting Jesus, what do you identify with in that story? What one thing do you identify with?
I think there's so many stories like this in the Bible, aren't there? And often what you don't hear is how that person got to the point of like shouting out. Like they did something really bold and crazy, and they like in a big crowd shouted crazily. They needed to get Jesus, and how did they get there? And I don't know. For me, I often think, well, maybe there must have been some people who told him about Jesus, who spent some time and put in the effort and loved him enough to actually give him the knowledge of Jesus and what Jesus had done, just to get him to that point where he was kind of open to make that decision. So I think, for me, fortunately, I was so blessed with all these amazing people in my life that helped me to, get to the point to make a decision and then, start the road of discipleship afterwards.
Fantastic, Paul. We are very encouraged. You've been such a great example and such an encouragement for us as you follow Jesus. So, Paul Howells, Close Encounter. Awesome. Thank you, friend.